12 hours old. Any more trades today?
Nothing today.
Okay. Do you expect any more, Al?
I don't expect anything of significance, Daryl. When you look at our roster right now, we're at 27. The goaltending situation will lock us here as an AP right now with Hugh A at World Juniors. And then, we have Corbin Vaughn on the injured list. So, that keeps us at our 25-man roster. But by midnight on January 10th, the 25-man roster is where we need to be. So there'll be some other roster moves in terms of getting down numbers here, whether that's 2 or 3 bodies, and whether that involves trades or not is to be determined.
When you say midnight January 10th, that's the whole roster deadline for everything, and is that the night of the 10th or the day before the 10th?
The night of the 10th.
The night of the 10th, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. So
The actual trade deadline is 4 o'clock our time on the 10th.
Okay.
And then the roster deadline is midnight.
Okay.
I guess why do you make these trades now as opposed to maybe a little bit closer to January 10th?
Well, the day doesn't really matter, whether it's the 1st, 7th, or 8th. When you have a deal in place that you feel is the right thing for your organization, you get the deal done. It's a competitive market. People are involved in other deals. I didn't see anything that would tell me that if we held out, we would get any more. We were pleased with the deals, and when you have a dance partner and he says yes, you sign the paperwork.
Speaking of the deals, the Suzdalev one, sending him to Saskatoon, were there discussions earlier to try to get him back in Regina, or when did those discussions happen? Was it the Blades who talked to him about him coming back to the WHL?
No, the Blades had no permission to talk to anybody in Stützlev's camp about returning to the WHL. We worked with Newport Sports, his agency in Washington, from the day I got the job to the day we traded him in terms of his status in returning to the league, what happened in terms of his reassignment from Hershey to Mora. We were very involved from the get-go.
And so just your first year as the GM here, how long did it take to kind of evaluate this roster and now realize these were the pieces you wanted to move and these were who you could get the most value for?
Well, essentially, I said from the get-go that there was going to be a process in terms of evaluating the roster, evaluating our prospect pool, and evaluating our draft capital. And we took the time to do that. We talked about where we are, where we want to be, and determined that it was important to make moves, to build this team and get it to where we want to be, which is a contender. And we're not quite there yet. We still have some work to do, but really it was a process right up to the last couple of weeks, and it was determined along the way that our 19 and 20-year-old players we would listen on, we would discuss, and that's how it all evolved in terms of the Vallis deal and the Berg deal. And essentially the Stützlev deal, was something at the last minute that we weren't even sure we were going to get him back. Things weren't going great in Mora in terms of ice time and opportunity for him to play. Washington and Newport felt that they had to get him playing more. We had discussions just before Christmas about the possibility that he might be reassigned to the WHL. And from there, we worked on what it looked like if he stayed with us, and what it looked like and who the suitors would be if we decided to move him.
So he might have been playing here. I might have misunderstood.
Washington was excellent,
Yeah.
in terms of those discussions, in terms of returning to the WHL.
Yeah.
Complete transparency. Of course, Washington, he hasn't played a lot this year. Washington's preference would be that he got to a contending team and hopefully have a long playoff run, which would be important for his development, especially when you look at the fact I think he's only played 12 or 13 games since the middle of September. But Washington was very fair in understanding that if the hockey club here couldn't get a deal done that was satisfactory for us, they would have supported Stützlev returning to Regina.
Okay. So what are you hoping for this team going forward for the rest of the season?
No change. I think when you look at when you look at our roster, I feel comfortable in saying that Ty Gibson comes into our lineup, and not a lot of difference between him and Berg in terms of their skill set. They've both had different opportunities when you look at their numbers and what Berg got here and what Gibson got in Everett. We've bolstered our back end quite a bit with the addition of Bukowski and Barsic. Barsic will be here today. He's been under the weather with the flu for a few days, but he's on his way to Regina today, and hopefully he'll be healthy enough to play on Friday. So I like it where we're at the back end. Ultimately, the difference between our team moving forward, where we were a couple of days ago and where we are today, is Borja Vallis. That's a tough deal. He's a good player. When I told him we had moved him, I explained to him that it's an exciting opportunity for you to play on a real good team, and I said to him, earn a contract so you're not back in the league next year and I don't have to watch you play as a 20-year-old. But at the end of the day, some people will wonder, what's the difference between moving Borja Vallis as a 19-year-old and a 20-year-old? The difference is getting a first-round talent and 17-year-old Bukowski. A year from now, a 20-year-old is traditionally worth draft picks. So, to land a guy like Bukowski, we had to make a difficult decision on Vallis. Now, and Britt, to answer your question, fully answer your question, we're missing a top 6 forward, which will be hard to replace. We understand that, but guys need to step up. We've built a team identity here that's kept us competitive. We need to continue to do that, and some guys will get new opportunities, bigger opportunities, and there's no reason why we can't stay competitive. Right now we're looking at the balance of remaining competitive, wanting to play meaningful games, do our best to compete for a playoff spot, but that balance is that it was time for us to consider, when I talk about all those things, roster, prospect pool, draft capital, there was some work to be done there, and we needed to address that. And no one here in this organization from top to bottom just wants to get by or just slide into the playoffs. We want to build the next contending team here, and to do that, whether that's 2 or 3 years down the road, we had to look at some significant moves and some difficult decisions, and that's what I felt I felt and our organization felt that we needed to do.
You said the eventual goals for this team to be a contender, compete for a championship. How far away is this team now after these moves? Is it still a pretty good process there, or do you guys feel closer now?
Well, I really think we're in a 2-year window in terms of that process. I think we've bolstered that process with next year's team. When you look at, a Moore being 18 by then, a Bukowski being 18 by then, the Vaughns, Bridgman, Tanner Howe is a 19-year-old, so on and so on. But at the end of the day, I think the competitive window for our team is, let's see where we're at this year and next. And when that 06 group is 19, we should be ready to take a pretty good step.
You've had a lot of history with Hockey Canada, World Juniors and stuff. Unfortunately, they lost this morning. Just watching the tournament, your thoughts on the team's play this year?
Well, you know what? A lot of adversity. When you look at losing the 2 defensemen early on, and then the injury to Savoy and Furcus heading over there, I think it was. But at the end of the day, watching the game today, they were the much better team the last 40 minutes. They could have ran away with that game in the third period, probably won it 5 or 6-2. They just didn't find a way to score. It's a tough tournament. The Czechs hang around, they hang around, they hang around. They get a fluky goal and you're out of the tournament. It's disappointing for a lot of very good people that are in Sweden right now, and disappointing, I'm sure, for a lot of great young men that were on that team. They got a bad break, and it's tough that they're out.
We talk about the pressure that's on them. You've seen it firsthand. Is it unfair what we expect from these kids all the time?
I think sometimes. I think that, but it's Daryl. It's an elite program. We're talking about elite players. That's our top high performance at this level in the country. And I think a lot of the players, the coaches, the management that are there, they understand the pressures. That's motivation. That's exciting. that type of pressure to play at that level, and the responsibility that comes with it. The players and managers and coaches that are there, they live for that. We all live for that. We want to be in that moment, and it just didn't work out for them
We
today.
see that here too, though. I was talking to some of your players over the last couple of games about how tough it is just knowing the trade deadline is coming too. That they say, we understand when we just sign up for junior. I'm an old softie. I've seen it years when there's one Pat trade in 2 seasons or something. Is it tough on these kids? Is it tough when you have to tell a kid like Vallis, listen, you're going to a good opportunity? Is it tough to tell these kids they've been traded?
Absolutely, and Vallis, Berg, Parker Berg, and Boria, and as you say that, Daryl, I certainly want to comment on thanking 2 very good young men for their time as Pats. They were original Pats. They grew up here. We wish them nothing but the best. No, it's not ideal to sit down and tell those young guys that they've been traded, not only for the competitiveness in terms of the hard hockey decisions you need to make, but on a personal level, it's not enjoyable. We want to move forward here where we make less trades. We want to draft well. We want to develop our players. We want to complement our draft and develop model with the odd trade here and there, not the other way around. If it's the other way around, you're not going to be successful. So that's why draft capital, the prospect pool, building all that back up is so important.
Did you find I think when you showed up and you talked about the draft capital, you guys were short a lot of draft choices, weren't you? I can't keep track of who you've got now. Are you back up? Are you above?
Yeah, we're in better shape. I think, Daryl, when I got here, we talked about last year's draft. We didn't have a 1 and a 2. Heading into this year, we didn't have a 1 and a 3 in this draft. When you don't have back-to-back ones, it's tough to sustain in terms of building. In saying that, I think the group found a good way. Found a couple good players in the 3rd round, and Kuzma, who I think should have went higher, and Klassen are good picks. So we've got some good young players at the same time. But you look at today's WHL, and with the fact that 15 and 16-year-old signed players are ineligible to be traded, you need to have draft capital to be able to make moves and improve your team. And I want to give our scouts the draft capital that we can do a good job in that area where it's a Bantam draft. You're going to make mistakes along the way, but if you have 6 picks in the first 3 or 4 rounds, then the percentages are that you're going to hit a little bit better than if you only have 1 or 2 picks in the first 5 rounds.
You like how your team's playing now?
I do.
What do you like about it?
It's never going to be perfect, at the junior level, but I really believe that this team has remained competitive with a team identity that's about work and compete, details and structure. I think our coaches have done a good job in that area. I think our leaders have done a good job in that message and playing to that team identity. And the reality is that we're just not as talented and skilled, particularly up front, in terms of natural goal scoring ability compared to some other teams. And that compete, that structure, that detail, that work is what's kept us competitive. And that's the team identity they've established, bought in. I give the coaches and the players all the credit for that. And we have to maintain that moving forward, because it's important not only for our team, but it's important for our players and their development that we continue to play meaningful games here and see if we can push our way and find a way to get into the playoffs.